Yes, welcome back to Footy Classified. Our reviews for the bottom 10 clubs of season 2020 start now, and Ross and Lloydie will go from the bottom up. Adelaide 18th, equal on points with North Melbourne 17th. Two young coaches who found it pretty tough.
Yeah, it was flailing early, I thought, but the 3 wins at the end really gave them some impetus and fuelled their belief for the next year. 9 debutants. They've put some senior experience around him. So I think they've just got to keep building on the platform, and the club's got to stay aligned and keep believing.
And Caro, North Melbourne?
Well, interestingly, Scott Burns has come in to be a senior assistant and advisor to young Matthew Nicks, which is great. We knew he needed help. They ended the team on the year on a high. North ended on a low and almost got the wooden spoon. Ross, is it correct that you've been approached to do some mentoring work with Reece Shaw?
Categorically, no.
Well, your name has been raised at some very high circles as someone... I can tell you right now it has been. Oh, you look so shocked.
I think he is.
Reece Shaw clearly needs help. I mean, we know that a lot of senior players are looking at leave. We hear that maybe Shaun Higgins also...
yeah, I think Shaun Higgins will go to Geelong.
Yep, and we've talked about Ben Brown already. Clearly rebuilding. Clearly the rebuilding decision has come way too late. We know that Reece Shaw needs a lot of help. Ed, there's also concern at very high levels again that this is a club without any sort of identity or any sort of brand at the moment. What do North need to do?
Well, I suppose one of the things, as you're saying, Caroline, you're hearing it around the traps. Now, North Melbourne have fought really hard to retain their identity at North Melbourne. But I think what's happening now, and particularly since COVID-19, everybody has to pay their way. So I think the AFL are looking at North to say, well, will you commit to Tasmania, or what will you do to actually do a bit of extra heavy lifting for the competition as well? So, look, I think they've got the people. You've got Ben Buckley, the president. You've got Ben Amafio in there, who's now been there for a year to get himself right as the CEO. They're rebuilding on the ground, and they've got really effective business people around the place to get themselves right. And I think they just have to put a stake in the ground and be something, to stand for themselves, and then aim that up and really drive that as what North Melbourne stands for.
Well, yeah, they don't stand for much at the moment, Sam, and their coach has had some really terrible post-game appearances, and Ben Buckley really has a lot to answer for a lot of the decisions.
But Caroline, everyone looks bad when you finish 17th. It's as simple as that.
They paid over $1 million to a group of people last year for a club with those financial issues. It was some poor decisions.
We might move on from North Melbourne and go to the 16th place Sydney Swans, Lloydie, who didn't have many wins to their name, but they did show under John Longmire that they were willing to change, and it seems like a brand new game plan.
Yeah, they're a hard side to beat, the Sydney Swans. You've got to earn every victory you get, and I thought they, no Isaac Heaney towards the end of the year. And
no Lance Franklin.
No Lance Franklin as well, and I thought that McCartan's form in defence, they found someone there. So I look at Buddy Franklin, and that's a big talking point. Hasn't played much footy over the last 2 years, and it's a lot of money still that they're investing into him, and I think at his best, I still think he's got some good football in him, but when you've been out for 2 years and they can really get on you, when you keep repeating hamstring injuries, Ross, they can keep going in your time and time again.
Yeah, but almost the best athlete the game's ever seen. I don't think you can expect him to be the marquee player for the remainder. So they've got a tall dilemma. They need to get a key back, a ruck in, and another key forward that stands up and supports Buddy. Like, if I'm the Swans, I'm thinking, well, Cameron's in our own backyard and out of contract. Maybe you're having a crack at him, which would...
Jeremy Cameron.
Well, if you're going to look for someone, you might as well start at the top, and he's free. That would, and there's, put the cat amongst the pigeons.
Wouldn't be the first time that the Sydney Swans have stolen something from GWS.
I don't think he's plucked that out of nowhere either, by the way.
What would you do if you were Buddy? Would you encourage him to drop weight, and would you play him deeper out of the square? How would you coach...
I'm not a conditioning expert, but his mobility is his strength. I think you just need a good runner, and you need continuity. You see with players that get continuity, but I'm really excited with what I saw against Geelong. They run, they're skillful, they've got a number of them. They just need some pillars around, and they'll come back very quickly, the Swans.
One of those pillars, Tom Papley, chose to stay with Sydney and not to go to Carlton. Who's closer to a flag, in your view?
The Carlton or Sydney?
Yep.
I think Sydney are ahead. Sydney, no doubt.
Wow. That's pretty strong. We might move on to the 15th place Hawthorn Footy Club. And Eddie, we'll go to you. Given the success that the Hawks have had since 2008, no one's come near them in that period. Is it just a fait accompli that they're going to have to go back to the draft and not necessarily start again, but work from the bottom up? Or do you think that Graham Wright and Alistair Clarkson can still trade their way out of this?
Yeah, you can if you're good and you can pick up some good players. I mean, don't forget they've had a number of players who are super A-graders who had injuries, came to the club and have had a year and a funny old year to come through. They've still got some good players there. If they straighten up pretty quickly, they'll jump up pretty quickly as well, I would have thought, at Hawthorn. But the other thing is you just have to take into consideration when you do go for 4 in a row. Can I just say that again? 4 in a row. It's happened once. Only once in 27, 28, 29 and 30 when you had the Brisbane Lions who pushed to go for that 4. And why wouldn't you go for immortality? Then it's a payoff because you have to hold on to guys who probably just go over the cliff. You don't trade them out the way you would if you're coming out and into competition, into the premiership window, all that type of stuff. So when the Hawks did it the same, it was inevitably going to happen. But gee, they've earned their right to rebuild, haven't they? They have been absolute value for money. If you're a Hawthorn supporter, you go, yep, I've got a few DVDs I've got to look at for the next few years while we rebuild. But I don't think it'll take too long.
Yeah, I think Will Day stands out like a sore thumb at Hawthorn, and I thought Scrimshaw was absolutely brilliant towards the end of the year as well. So pick 4 in the draft this year. Look forward to seeing a young star join Hawthorn because I think they seriously need it.
You think they're committed to rebuilding now?
I think so, yeah.
And I think you've got to back Alistair in.
Yeah, yep.
Caro, the Gold Coast Suns, 14th. They were 3-1 at the start of the year and everything was looking good on the way down to Geelong. Matthew Rowell, of course, does his shoulder and wheels falling off is a too dramatic way to put it, but they clearly had a poor second half of the year.
Why is it too dramatic?
It's probably not, but I just thought I'd safeguard myself.
Disappointing, really disappointing end to the year. The Gold Coast would say they predicted this sort of finish or even worse at the start of the year when they fronted the AFL Commission. They don't see themselves as any chance to play finals till 2022. They weren't belted a lot. Their percentage rose immeasurably. However, the last week is just redefine that footy club in terms of their brand, in my view. This happened 2 years ago. Stuart Dew urinating outside a pub. It was a bad few weeks for the club at that time. 2 more captains had left in Lynch and May. The coaches went out on the source. Unbelievably, John Haynes, the head of football, filmed that, sent it around to coaches' WhatsApp. A coach or two, a disgruntled coach or two, has put that out in the last few weeks.
That's unbelievable that they've done that.
But, yeah, unbelievable.
Kara, who leaked the leak?
Well,
I was waiting for that, Eddie. Yeah.
You could say they peed a good season up against the wall too, Ed. But what it was very poor, in my view, media management and leadership from that football club. They knew they were tipped off last week that this was about to come out. Another club knew about it.
What did you want them to do?
Get on the front foot and look after your good men, look after your leaders, even if they've stuffed up.
Carol, it was 2 years ago.
Sam, what happened...
Would you have printed that story?
Oh, probably, yeah.
Really? You would have printed that story knowing it's 2 years old?
Well, this is a club who said they've moved in new people to fix their culture. That was not a great cultural story for the Gold Coast.
I'm not sure that
club.
you can say that
Sam,
a 30-second incident 2 years ago redefines the culture that they've helped build for 2 months.
Of course not. But what happened was, because they didn't get on the front foot and get ahead of the story, it's released on a Monday after a terrible last game defeat against Hawthorn again, 2 years in a row, and it's linked to COVID, which is wrong. In brand terms, it was a disaster.
Kara, can I put it to you, though? What would have been the benefit of bringing it out on Thursday last week before the last game? And then they get belted and then it goes on again.
I disagree. I think if you
hope that it would get through and that some people wouldn't run it.
No, they knew it was going to come out.
Just on field, this is a staggering graphic as well. This is their first 5 games compared to their last 5 games for the last 5 years. So they get out of the blocks 5 years in a row, 3-2, 3-2. 2-3's been their worst, and they're 1-24 in their last 5 games for the last 5 years. So that's, to me, is you can use youth for only so long. But I think their footy was better this year, but still...
They're more competitive
they were, but still, it's just such a losing mentality. And what you just touched on there, Ruffy kicked 6 goals in the last game last year, and they're hitting him lace out just to try and help out a guy retiring. 12 months on, Piopolo kicks 3, and they're sending a full-back forward who'd kicked 1 goal in his career to score a goal, and they're all laughing on the boundary line. That just shows how far off the Suns still are.
Yeah, but they did improve. Percentage 60 to 90 shows are very competitive. My view is that's why Rao's so important. Their midfield, he's the only A-grader there, and there are a lot of good solid AFL players, but they need a couple to support him.
We now move into 13th place Essendon in our review. Matthew Lloyd, it was a very disappointing year for the Bombers.
Yeah, it was disappointing. I think they only won 1.5 games from about their last 7 or 8 games. And talk about identifiable brands. Well, how do Essendon want to play the game? And Ben Rutten said this at half-time of the Melbourne game on the weekend.
Oh, look, a fair bit to worry about there. We're getting belted at centre bounce. We're not working in defence. There's a fair bit there.
That really jumped out at me as a coach going, I'm just not getting the players doing what I want. And he said, we're not working in defence. And we take a look at some of those stats that he's been there for 2 years, along Blake Carousel to come in for the second one. But teams scoring from their D50 to forward, they're ranked 18th. Points against 15th, their pressures 15th, and their contested ball inside 15th, and yet they're not scoring either, Ross. So he's got a massive, massive job to get the style he wants pushed to the players, whether it's discontent, whether it's confusion, but it's not working for them.
Yeah, well, the numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
There's a mountain of work to be done out there, so they need to fix their list. Those that want to be in, if you don't want to be here, well, we need strategically to manage you out, and they need some people to drive that club forward. And we've spoken a lot about leadership and unity and trust, and it's not there.
So why do so many good players want to leave the Essendon Football Club? You look at Essendon this time last year, they made the decision to stick with John Worsfold. They defended and defended the decision. We now know that not everybody agreed with the decision. Xavier Campbell was being lured by the AFL. He was seen as part of a succession plan that Gillan McLachlan wanted. He was the man most likely. I think there was some disenchantment there about Xavier and whether he was leaving or staying. Now I feel as though, Matthew, there's a lot of finger-pointing going on. Xavier's ended the year obviously on not nearly as much of a high as last year. People are, Daniel Richardson, I think, is also under pressure. The list manager's under pressure. Xavier himself has been put under pressure from the board, even though they believe in him. I think in the end, he's got to make the decision about what he wants to do and what he wants his football club to be.
It's hard enough winning a premiership when everything's going right, and so they've all got to be rowing in the same direction.
Kevin Sheedy coming on.
You've got the spectre of Sheedy in the background,
Yeah.
the greatest coach in the history, and he's sitting over the top. Yeah. It's a very awkward situation.
There's a lot of finger-pointing going on at the Essendon Football Club, which is disappointing.
Including at the players. I read and heard earlier this week that somehow Joe Danaher is apparently being selfish by not giving them a decision as to what he wants to do. He told them 12 months ago he wanted it out, and they held him against his will.
So why
he doesn't know that footy club anything.
But why hasn't he told them now? Because he's clearly going.
Absolutely.
But there have been... O'Keefe wanted to go to Carlton. Sydney didn't do the trade. He went back and went on to be a great player and win a premiership. So,
but this hasn't happened with Joe, has it?
Not yet.
But no, seriously, why wouldn't he tell them that he's going? What's the delay?
Well, I don't know. He probably wants to tour other clubs, I would think. But if I'm Essendon, I would just say, look, you
the
clearly
clubs
don't
you
want to
go
be
to
here.
are in the finals.
Yeah, that's right.
Lloyd, what did you think of Joe Danaher? I called that game, and I think at one stage I said he looked like he was 100. He just couldn't move. I thought his groin was really sore. He just had no lateral movement. I can't remember which Melbourne player just walked past him. Yeah. He couldn't even put his arm out to put the tackle. Then in the last quarter, he went on the ball and suddenly found it. And the Bombers nearly snuck up and had a chance of winning for playing about 15 minutes of footy against a team trying to make the 8.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. For 3 quarters, he was ordinary, couple of disposals. But that last quarter, I thought he turned the game. So whoever he plays for next year, I think that forward ruck option, he could be get back to his best in a new environment.
Ross, can I ask you about Fremantle, who finished 12th as we move on in our reviews? Justin Longmuir, as a new coach, has seemed to be able to teach them a different kind of game style in a short period of time.
All credit to... I think they were 0-4. They finished 6-6. So win-loss percentage the same, 40%. Yep. But some really good signs with their youth. Chera, Brayshaw, Ryan's continued development, Cox continued, Sean Darcy. I think they've got a number of A-graders to help bring them through in Mundy, Fife, Walters. I think Stephen Hill back from 2 years of injury. Mm-hmm. And if they can sort of right the ship with Hogan, and they've got Taberner and they've got Lobb, they've got a lot going for them. I expect them to really push hard for the finals next year.
So moving on to the Carlton Football Club, but sticking with Fremantle for a moment, another comparison. Carlton seem a bit miffed that Fremantle ended the season well. Fremantle is seen really to have had a better year than Carlton, who promised big things and didn't deliver. Is that fair or not? Who's had the better year in your view?
Well, I think if you go win-loss, but Carlton talked heavily about playing finals this year and set the bar really high. I don't think they delivered on that. They didn't put together... Watching them, I don't think they're as hard and tough as Fremantle. I don't think they've got the amount of A-graders that Fremantle have got. I think structurally in front and behind the ball, they're similar, but Fremantle with availability got key backs, key forwards. I think that really Fremantle's midfield runs deeper than just Cripps and Murphy. I think Fife, Walters, Brayshaw, Chera, Sarong through there, they get Young back in. I think they've invested heavily in the draft. I think they play tougher footy. The Blues won't like hearing this, and they play for longer 4 quarters. But they've got to fix their attack. They're number 2 defence or 4th, but they low entries, conservative with the ball that help them defend.
And he's got to teach them how to stop run-ons because you must train for that consistently. How do you stop the flow of a game, which he's never been able to do?
And how we define it is 5 unanswered goals.
Yes.
I think they had 8 or 9 of them this year. In today's shortened game, that's an unbelievable figure. I think if they can get 4 quarters together, but they're too much reliance on too few there.
Lloydie, what about the Giants?
Ross, can I ask this, Ross, do you think Justin Longmuir's better coach than you, mate? I'm only asking her because I know your earplug's not in and I can see it on your shoulder.
You just got a question if you think Justin Longmuir is a better coach than you are, but I think we know the answer to that. We probably shouldn't make him answer. Lloydie,
no doubt.
Lloydie, the Giants. So much discussion and controversy around them. They finished 10th in the end. Is their window for success, and I know we use the term window probably a little bit too much, are they still in it, or is it time to go in a new direction?
No, I think they can still mix it, get it right. If they get there, it's like we've spoken about Essendon. Just things don't look to be right at the GWS Giants. They didn't play hard, tough footy like we saw them get to a grand final the year before. Their midfield underperformed. You know, some will say Canelio, Hopper, Taranto, De Boer, they're all 2-1 paced, all those sorts of things. But Cameron didn't look right. Canelio, we know, wasn't right. That's the job.
They reminded me of the Saints near the end of my tenure. 11, we made the finals, but they almost didn't, because of the disappointment of grand final 9 and 10 and the draw. It's almost, we've been to the well, we're not there and we're losing. They just looked a little bit off.
And Lloydie with the
Ross,
9th place.
Can I ask Ross, on that one, Leon Cameron to me looks like he should go in a camper van and as long as possible go for a holiday and get away. It just looked like he carried last year's grand final for so long. If Joe Daniher looked 100 last weekend, he looks 200 and his age story continues.
Unfortunately, Ed, all his assistants have decided to go on the holiday and leaving him. I think we still don't know what Mark McVeigh's doing. We know that Lenny Hayes has left, Brad Miller, Stevie J's come on board, but I don't think he can afford to go on a holiday, and the AFL look like they're withdrawing some funding as well.
I think he can't afford not to, Cara. I just think he just needs to
freshen up. Come back, new perspective, fresh added, new support, but my view, they're at a crossroad. They could go really either way from here.
And Lloydie, for the 9th placed Melbourne Football Club, is it glass half full or half empty?
Half empty on that year. I think that I know they hit back from a 17th position, but they're better than that. And they lost to Sydney and Fremantle when there was a golden opportunity to play finals. And I want to show the goal kickers from the last 2 seasons. So last 2 seasons combined, when you got Bailey Fritsch, a medium, Petrarca a medium, and Jaden Hunter small, and Melsham a medium, leading your way, you're not going to go that far. So I just wonder if Ben Brown, if they could get Tom McDonald out, maybe pay some of his wage and get Ben Brown in, at least he straightens them up and gives them an opportunity to score.
Wonder whether Tom McDonald would be a good fit at the Giants with them needing another key back and Phil Davis coming to the last couple of years. Anyway,